Hey guys, this section is the 6.7 classwork assignment, and I just went ahead and started right away with determining the type of function which is represented by this table. So as you can see, the x values increase steadily by 10, so plus 10 plus 10 plus 10, and the y values decrease steadily by 3. So that is a linear function because it has a constant first difference, which I can say, or I can just kind of, recognize that. Linear functions have a constant slope, and in this case, it's negative 3 over 10. The function next to it, the x values here increase by 2 steadily. The y values, just looking at these, like if I look from right to left, that's plus 2, plus 6, plus 18. That's not linear, and I could keep going for a second difference, but you can sort of start to recognize this like times 3, times 3, times 3. Or you can say divided by 3, divided by 3, divided by 3, or even times a third, okay, if you want to think about a constant rate. So when you have this constant factor ratio rate, this multiplication pattern, we're dealing with an exponential function. So here we're writing exponential functions that pass through a pair of points. And again, I can sort of think about extending a table here, and especially when I have points that are adjacent, so 2 and 3, this is really nice. So 0, 1, 2, 3, out of the 2 is a 12, out of the 3 is a 24. So as I increase by 1 here, I'm increasing by a factor of 2 here. Because it's exponential, I need to look for a factor that's here. If it's times 2 to the right, it's divided by 2 to the left. So what times 2 is 12? 6. What times 2 is 6? 3. So this gives me two pieces, the initial value, the a, and the growth rate, the b. And there's my function. I can take the same approach with number 4 here. So the 1 and the 3, and again, you can do this a few different ways, kind of like I did in the first example, or you can do this sort of table method as well. So if I fill in what I have, I can kind of find these missing values. So what do I multiply by 2 to get to 32? I multiply it by 16. So I'm not cutting that in half, I'm taking its square root. So it's got to be times 4. Because if you multiply it by 4 twice, that is the same as multiplying by 16. So that gives me the missing value of 8. And then I can divide by 4 to go to the left here. So 2 divided by 4 is a half times 4 is 2, times 4 is 8, times 4 is 32. So now I have again my two pieces of critical information, my a value, a half, and my growth factor, 4. And last but not least, I'm going to take a different approach with this one just because, why not? So I'm going to think about my base function here and how I can plug in these two values. So I already know this is decay because as I go up in the x, I'm going down in the y. So I want to sort of think about, okay, b squared, when I have when my x is 2, my y is 16, when my x is 5, my y is 2. So I'm going to start with the bigger exponent because the first number is my x and that's my exponent. So if I plug these two values in here, I get 2 equals a times b to the 5th. If I plug these two values in here, I get 16 equals a times b to the 3rd. And if I divide one equation by the other, it's kind of like you're like mashing them up into one equation. I get 1/8 equals a over a, cancels, b to the 5th divided by b cubed is b squared. So if 1/8 is b squared, then b is going to be the square root of 1/8, which is not really a pretty number, unfortunately. So b is going to be the square root of 1/8. So I'm looking at this thinking, gosh, that's not right. And that's because this is a 2. And this is a 3, so this is the cubed root of 1/8, which is so much nicer because that is a half. Because a half to the 3rd power is 1/8. So b is a half, and to find the a value, I can just plug that into either one of these. I'm going to plug it in here just because I'd rather raise a half to the 2nd power than the 5th. So 16 is a times 1/2 squared, which is a 4th. To get rid of this 1/4, I multiply both sides by 4, And I get, sorry, I'm running out of space here, I get A is 4 times 16, which is 64. So my equation is going to read y equals A, 64, times B, 1/2, to the x power. And I can plug in these points. So in other words, 1/2 to the 5th power is 1 over 32 times 64 is 2. 1/2 to the 2nd power is a 4th times 64 is 16. So they both check.